Thank you for being here.
This is awesome. I'm really happy for you, proud of you, pumped for you.
It's
That's how it all starts.
It's so interesting how you and I have had a conversation just around just different topics for probably a year and a half now.
Yeah.
Right. I remember we were in your house, out in the back, beautiful sprawling yard, the doors open, and we're just talking about what modern day Don could be, but most important, who it's going to serve. Right. So with modern day Don building and growing itself into a channel that's going to bring great conversations, collaborations, adventures, things that we're going to be able to walk through and go on together, and be able to educate and inspire along the way, and entertain a little something too.
Man, I remember that conversation, and I remember specifically talking to you about something that is what I would talk to any entrepreneur about, or anybody that wants to start a brand, right? But I think what's unique about what you brought to that conversation was, and take this with respect, because I mean it. You brought a level of ignorance to the conversation with how far along you already were. And I'll explain. No idea, no brand, no movement, no impact, no purpose starts without a belief. You have a belief about the person and persons you want to serve. You have a belief. You live that belief. You are authentic to that belief. And you want to talk about that belief as an operating system for other people to live by. That was what you brought to the first conversation. And man, I got to tell you, you want to know why 8 out of 10 businesses fail? It's because they don't have that belief from the jump. They don't know how to articulate it. They don't know how to tell that story. And if you can't articulate what you believe and why you believe it, how are you going to expect them to?
Oof. Completely.
You can't.
Completely, yeah.
So the reason I'm excited for you and excited for this, and why it's such an honor to be part of it, is because I want people like you to win. Because it's people like you that are going to produce other people like you. And that's the impact that we get to exponentially make without even a lot of effort, bro.
Well, that's a huge compliment, so thank you, right? And with all the conversations that we've had, and to be able to humbly accept something like that from someone that's, built things in the past too. So, thank you for that.
Oh,
and,
man.
with the team that's around, obviously this isn't something I could even potentially lift on my own. But I do need to say that with the team that we've built, the modern day Don team, and all the men behind the scenes and everyone that's responsible for everything we're doing here, it's nothing that I could do alone. But at the same time, with leadership comes vision, right? Without vision, we'll all perish. So if I can provide that, if I can articulate that, if I can lead the charge into battle, all the better.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
And you're handling it the right way. And you know what, in this conversation, I will probably use the word team 1,000 times. So it's probably worth talking about it.
Yeah, no, I definitely 1,000%. One of the other things as we were coming in to get us started was we were talking about cigars. And part of the original conversation we had was in saying, hey, we need to have a cigar together. So I have a cigar here for you. And the thought process was to have something that was a little bit of everything. The metaphor we just used in the humidor was the cigar world is a lot like the wine world, right? It's a lot about palate. It's a lot about where the grape was produced, where the leaf was produced, but then also, the production of the grape and the production of the leaf, right? It's a very, very similar metaphor. So the one I have today is it's a punch. This company's been around since 1840 from Cuba. This happens to be a Nicaraguan filler, right? And the wrapper is originally from a Cuban seed. So they're so detailed in some of the companies that they'll have original Cuban seeds that they'll take to other countries. And then that ends up becoming a Cuban wrapper. So this is going to be my gift. But thank you for being here and for being a part of this journey, because we're just getting started, right? Modern Day Don, the channel in and of itself, the adventures we're going to go on, the conversations we're going to bring, the people we're going to collaborate with along the way. It's just, we're just getting started, and for you to be a part of it means a lot. I love it.
Listen, the beauty of this whole thing is, like, I don't even know what you just did, but that was super cool.
All right, so here.
That's a punch.
So compliments to Red Phone Booth for for hosting us here, of course, and providing this cutter. So when the top of the cutter, you'll have different ways you can cut the top of your cigar. So the very top, you'll see a V cut.
Yeah.
Or there'll be multiple straight cuts, two straight and then a bigger V. So it depends on the size of the cigar and how big of a cut you want. So if you notice, I just took the cap off.
Yep.
Just took the cap off. And now what we'll do is we'll toast the cigar.
Toast it. I love that.
Toast it.
Great word.
We want to warm
Words
it up
matter,
a little
brother.
bit. Words matter.
Words start wars, you know.
Oh, whew. The power of words and propaganda, unfortunately, right?
Tell me about
That's
it.
the negative use of words. All right, so now you'll take this. I'll hand this to you, slide that back, and then you'll just finish it off pulling as you light the tip. And I'll catch up as soon as you're done. Smooth.
So far.
Wasn't that one of the adjectives from before, smooth?
It was. You know, we've talked about this. I'll say the same thing about the cigar that I said about before I had my first glass of bourbon. That I'm not a cigar guy, right? But I wasn't a bourbon guy either. I think your first taste of bourbon, you're always, right, taken back. But then you sort of develop this unique sense for it and appreciation for its intricacies. So I love the way that you went into the history. You know, I'm a history guy, so I'm excited to share this with you, not because I'm having a cigar,
Yeah.
but because of what it means to you,
Yeah.
the passion you have behind it, and the symbolism to this whole process. I love it, man.
We're going to have a great conversation about this 5-10 years from now. I can feel it, right? In your yard or, out in the back, maybe a fire pit, something like that. But
Sounds good to me.
with that said, obviously with where we're going with modern day Don, the conversations that we want to bring, there's a lot of topics that of value that you can bring to the audience. And starting out, if you would, walk through maybe just a little bit of the journey. There's a couple things I would love to unpack of the journey.
Yeah.
But if you would, giving a little bit of an overview of the journey, the chapters so far.
Sure.
And then if we can unpack some of those, which would be most relevant.
Yeah. It's probably not unlike a lot of journeys that are out there. If I had to describe it in 2 words, because I've done this before, my wife and I have talked about this, because we share a very similar sentiment and journey. Beautifully broken. There's a country song, you probably heard, Rascal Flatts, God Bless the Broken Road.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
It's the idea that the journey has been filled with challenges, triumphs, setbacks, massive failures, massive successes, all those things contributes to the person that's sitting before you today. But it wasn't until I became comfortable with being able to articulate the failures when things really turned for me. The context for that is simple. I grew up with an amazing family. My parents still together, still alive in Florida. My dad started as a bellboy when he was at a Howard Johnson hotel in Providence, Rhode Island, when he was 16 years old. His father, my grandfather, and my dad was the oldest of 4 kids. His father died of cancer when my dad was 13 years old. So the oldest boy losing his father, the oldest in the house, and he went to work.
At 13.
At 13, started working in his uncle's garage shop, fixing cars, pulling, tearing out engines, getting his fingers dirty. Then he got a job as a bellboy at Howard Johnson. 40 years later, my dad was the president, CEO of Howard Johnson Worldwide.
Beautiful.
And Super 8 hotels worldwide, largest franchise hotel operation in the world. And I say it because you talk about somebody who had an early challenge, created the discipline, and then went on this amazing path, right? That's an incredible story. My dad needs to write a book, From Bellboy to CEO, right?
Completely.
But man, if you went inside that story and you talked to him about it, I think he'd point to some major failures. But we all know that when you hit rock bottom, the only other place to go is up. And so those failures are catapults. So I grew up with this amazing family. My mom was dedicated to service, always volunteered, always was like the mom that gave out full-size candy bars on field trips and like, you know, it was great. Living in that culture of service and discipline, you know, was incredible for my brother and me. But I you know, for me, school was never my thing.
Okay.
Wasn't the smartest kid in the room, right? In the subject I was interested in, did great. The other stuff, not so much. Sports was my thing. I found a passion for sports early. I was a big kid, surprise, surprise, but I was always the biggest kid, the tallest kid. But where I grew up in the Northeast, born in Boston, they have weight limits for playing football in the Northeast. So when you're in the Pee Wee leagues, if you're over a certain weight, you can't play in your level. You got to play at the level your weight is at,
Okay.
right? So I'm in like the 4th grade, and my weight was like in the 8th grade division, right? I'm like this monster.
Yeah.
So for me, it was basketball.
Basketball.
It was basketball. You know, I grew up around, my family moved to Texas when I was 15. So before that, it was Boston Celtics, it was, you know, the Patriots, the Bruins, the Red Sox. Still to this day, those are my teams.
Okay.
Right? But basketball was my thing. It was the Jordan era. It was the Be Like Mike era. It was the era when everybody wanted the number 23 and to wear the, you know, the Air Jordans. And I was that kid, infatuated. Basketball was it. So I became, you know, basketball, and I got good. Made the AAU national team, you know, was traveling around the country playing basketball. Football, never even a thought. Everybody wanted me to play because I was this big, tall kid that could move, right? I think when I was 15, I could dunk. But I couldn't. And I actually had no interest. No one in my family ever played it. It looked hard, looked like it hurt.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, come on, basketball, just put on a jersey,
Yeah,
go
yeah.
play, go take a shower, you're done.
Yeah,
Football
right.
just seemed, games were long, hot, you know. And then my dad got an opportunity to move to Texas.
With Howard, he was with Howard Johnson the entire time.
No, actually, different chains throughout
But
the
in
years.
hospitality in the
But
hotel
always in
world.
hospitality.
Got it.
Yeah. So we moved to Texas. And I'm sure you've heard this term, but in Texas, football ranks on the list of priorities
Yeah.
with oxygen and Jesus.
Got it. Got it. Oxygen, Jesus, high school football.
Yeah.
Just football in general.
Yeah.
Got it.
I sometimes question that priority list, to be honest with you. You know, if you're in Texas, football's it.
Yeah.
So I literally show up as a freshman, and I'm just saying I don't want to play football, you know. And I'm 15. I'm 6'3" now, okay. But when I was 15, I was already 6'2", and I weighed 270 pounds,
At 15.
and I could dunk a basketball. So when I showed up to the school in Texas for the first time, I wanted to meet the basketball coach, and I wanted to show him that I could dunk a basketball, because I wanted him to know I could play. And so we did. Well, while I was in the gym, the entire football staff was in there. And after that was over, everybody met, I changed and whatever. And the football coach walked up to me and said, listen, I got good news and bad news. Okay? Bad news is, basketball's over. Good news is, football's gonna begin.
Timing-wise, it was that time of the year?
No, it was
Or
just,
he was voluntolding you?
I'm voluntolding.
Voluntold.
My family's moving, I'm in a new school. Yeah. Football's the last thing on my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty much it. And then it took over, man. You know, I absolutely hated the sport to begin with. Hated it. It hurt. It was hot. It was hard. Everything I said earlier. But it was in that journey where I found my faith, which was a absolute catapult to a lot of things in my life, particularly with the way I felt about myself physically, being so different physically than other kids, and emotionally, and how that tied together, and then what my faith did to give me security in who I was, in order to use that as a platform. And so when I found my faith when I was 16, everything flipped. Football became a vehicle, and was fortunate. Took it to Texas A&M, had an awesome career, and was fortunate to play a few years after that in the NFL. But you've known me now for a few years.
Yep.
How many football conversations have we had that have been very deep?
Not many.
Not many.
Not many. Yeah.
It's just not who I am. It's what I did. But what I took out of it is, I think, the most important thing to the whole equation. Football and the lessons I learned in it quite literally became the operating system for how I conducted myself personally and professionally. And ultimately, those two things distill back to team.
Got it. So when you're thinking about team on the business side of things, so you're at A&M, but you're in the NFL, and I love the framework of it wasn't who I was, it's what I did.
Yeah.
Right? So respect for that. So now you're transitioning out of the NFL, right? NFL not for long, right? I think that's what they usually say.
Yep.
So you're in the NFL. You're transitioning back into, let's say, the business world, right? Because as you said, and we know, that then business became the sport of choice.
Yeah.
So what was going through your mind, and how were you able to take the lessons from the football field, and when did things start to click that you can take the lessons from the football field to the professional world, and what was that path like?
You're asking a critical question, and it's the most important one in the whole dynamic.
Yeah.
Whether you're an athlete or you're in this point of your life or your career, typically it happens, you've been out of college a few years, you find yourself in the real world, right? Starting to figure out how to settle down.
Yep.
For pro athletes exiting the pro sport, or for people like I just described, the majority of people go through what's called the wilderness period.
Okay.
This is the what the hell am I going to do now phase. Mm-hmm. Everybody deals with it. You don't know what you're good at. You don't know where your skills lie. You don't know who to talk to. You don't know where to go. You're scared to death. You're intimidated. You're egotistical in a way that doesn't afford you the ability to be open about those vulnerabilities, because you don't want to tell people that you're scared. Mm-hmm. You're nervous. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do that. That's weakness, right? So you go into this period, and for pro athletes, it's hard when you think about it, right? Mm-hmm. You just went from being the best at your particular sport than 99.9% of the world, making money, huge followings on social media, fans screaming and chanting your name. The lights and spotlight is on you, and all of a sudden, boom, it's over. Which, by the way, that's exactly how it happens. Mm-hmm. When I got let go from the Tennessee Titans, my first team, mm-hmm. Jeff Fisher's the head coach, I was sitting in his office waiting for him to come.
This is the first team you were on, or the end of your career?
First team.
Got it.
I was sitting in his office because I was told to be there. I thought I knew what was coming. He walks in his office and goes to shut the door and pushes the door closed and goes to walk behind his desk. Before the door even closed shut, he just said, "We got to let you go." It brings back such a crazy memory even to think about it. In the minuscule time frame it took for him to say that sentence, mm-hmm. I felt like he wrecked my whole life. Everything I had done at that point, I thought. Mm-hmm. He just was like, that's what happens, right? And for athletes, you get put there and you're done and it's over, and you didn't do any internships in college because you were training the whole time.
Right.
What do you do? Where do you go? And for people in the business world, a lot of us find ourselves in that phase. We're letting go of the things that have maybe held us onto the past in a negative way. We're finding our journey towards the new. And it's a misunderstood process. And so what did I do? Call my dad.
Got it.
Dad, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. Where do I go? How do I be successful? His response was a question. What did you do to be successful in football?
His response was a question.
What did you do to be successful in football?
Yep.
Okay. And I started answering it. I was dedicated. I was disciplined. I had the desire to be the best. I knew how to perform under pressure. I knew how to handle adversity. I knew how to work within a multicultural team dynamic. I knew how to handle a loss. I knew how to handle a win. I knew how to be coached. I knew how to communicate. I knew how to adapt. And my dad said, just do that.
Do that. Yeah.
So fast forward. You look at the research that's been done. PwC did an annual CEO survey
Okay.
a few years ago. And this CEO survey it covers a lot of topics. This particular one was on the topic of leadership in American businesses. And the question was pretty simple. What's the greatest threat? What do you think the greatest threat to business is today?
Lack of leadership in the wings.
See, this is why you're a CEO. Close to 80% of the CEOs in that survey said that the number one threat facing businesses in the United States is not a lack of technical skills. It's not a lack of knowing what buttons to push on a job or the marketing process that you learned in your marketing 101 book in college. Those are not the most important. The greatest threat is a lack of key leadership skills.
Got it. Yep.
So what are leadership skills? Dedication, discipline, desire to be the best, performing under pressure, handling adversity, being a leader, teamwork, communication, handling a loss. All of the things that I instinctually learned as an athlete growing up. These were part of my DNA. All of those things are the most in-demand skills in business. Okay, I can work with that. So I did. And I immediately put that to practice. Now I had to go learn a different playbook.
Different field, completely different field, different uniform.
Right.
But
the discipline's the same.
Got it.
The techniques are the same.
Yep.
And that was it. So if you boil it down to how do you spend the least amount of time in the wilderness period? Personally, I think it's good to be there. I think it causes you to start looking inward instead of outward. We don't do that enough. It took me a while to get to that point where I could be really open and vulnerable about what I know is holding me back. Because when you do that and you share it with someone who has done it, that's the concept of mentorship. That person can give you a word that'll be the trigger word. That'll be the tipping point. That'll be the one thing that sets you on a trajectory that will short circuit your path to success. People talk about being effective and being efficient. I learned recently there's a big difference. The difference between being effective and efficient is very clear. Being effective is a jet airplane flying at 500 miles an hour through the air. Being efficient is a jet airplane flying at 500 miles through the air in the right direction. You are a jet engine. You are cranking. All systems go. But if someone could tell you, hey, if you just changed your heading 25 degrees, what you're trying to do, you're going to do in half the time. Why wouldn't you want that? So you got to check the ego and admit you don't have all the answers and find those people.
Right? Because then what part of the mentorship, right? So now once you leave the NFL, you're going into the business world, right? You're in the wilderness phase. You're finally getting through. You're getting great advice. Need to relight?
Yes, sir.
You're in the wilderness phase. You're getting great advice from strong men in your life. No coincidence to say that may be a major epidemic that we have right now, not only in the United States but around the world, of that type of mentorship and leadership and masculine father figures, right? But it sounds like you were very blessed to have that. So now you change the uniform, you get onto a different field, start learning the playbook. How does your business journey, then, the trajectory of the company that you co-founded to build out, how does that start from, what are we going back, probably 20 years then, when you first got into the business world? What, 02, 03?
03.
03, right? Because we graduate 99-ish.
01.
01.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2000.
2000, a couple years in the league. Now you're changing uniform, getting onto the field. So then with that toolbox of lessons learned and skill sets and mindset, then what's the business trajectory, right, from a finance perspective, right?
So so I studied communication and rhetorical theory at Texas A&M and political science. I thought someday public service may be my future, but that's critical to the way in which my journey unfolded in terms of what I do and the value I deliver. So communication was essential. There was no NIL, name, image, and likeness rules back when I played football at A&M, so we didn't get paid anything. And the NCAA, thankfully, allowed us to have jobs, and they allowed us to only make a certain amount of money. And my parents, I was on scholarship, but my parents weren't giving me spending money. You want that, go make it on your own, right? Earn it. And so I had a couple jobs, and I got jobs in radio, on air. And all through college, I was hosting radio shows, which sharpened this ability not just to be, to improve my articulation, my tone, my pace, the way I communicated, but also to do it in a way, because it's radio, to create theater of mind. Theater of mind being, I have to speak in a way that's going to paint a picture in your head to get you to go to a place that I want you to go. And it could just be an emotional spot. If I'm trying to sell a product over the air, it could be a more, response-driven language.
Yeah.
But just that art fascinated me. So anyway, fast forward, when I got done playing, I had opportunities and connections in the field of radio, but I knew the on-air people aren't really the ones that make money. It's the salespeople that make money. And one of the things my dad and I talked about was get right away, if you've got the gift of gab, which I had, you have it, right? Get in an environment where you have to eat what you kill.
Yep.
Get into 100% commission, just throw yourself to the wolves, because if you've got the mentality,
Preach, brother. Yep.
and you start seeing some of those early results, passion and just the fire you have takes over. And man, exactly what happened. I mean, I came in, applied just my success principles from football into what I was doing.
Radio.
Knew about radio because I'd been on the on-air side, so I brought a different perspective to clients. Listen, I know how to paint pictures and move response. I know how to drive emotion. And so we would do that. I was super successful, became the rookie of the year, highest grossing first person ever in the history of the company, all that stuff, right? Great. And then, but along that journey, there were some opportunities in real estate that I had noticed through my business.
Okay.
Opportunities that relied heavily on your ability to be a good communicator and sell. And I found gaps in current businesses in the market. Effectively, the way people sold residential homes pre-Zillow, pre-Realtor.com, before all that stuff, was you put an ad in the classifieds, right? That was it.
Yep.
So about that time, though, eBay was making a run, and I had found a new method of transacting residential real estate that involved using various trust documents. And without going into the details on that, but just effectively talking about creating a new model, I found that if I could create a new method of distribution to where the classifieds become an electronic method, I could turn properties much faster. And so I was, I think, one of the first people to list a home on eBay. And I sold my first property in 6 minutes. It was
On
awesome.
eBay.
Yeah, on eBay. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
So took that, started running with it. And in the first year, I think we moved around 20 homes. So I got this radio thing cranking, I got this entrepreneurial thing cranking, and
Now, are you in New York yet? Or
no, I'm still here.
You're still in Texas.
It was right around that time when
You were about to make the move.
when the Apprentice thing came along.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, how did that opportunity, was there a casting?
there was an open.
How does that work?
So there was an open casting call in Fort Worth.
Okay.
Yeah, my brother and I went. There were thousands of people waiting in line. It was like your typical thing. And they had told us that you're going to be in a room with 15 people. Everyone's going to get the elevator pitch, and that's it. And then if we want you to come back, we will. And so, I knew what I was walking into, right? I knew I was walking into a TV show that has to tell good stories. And so, if I'm a producer, which is what I did all through college, right, creating theater, what story would I tell about?
And what picture are you going to paint,
That's it.
right?
I would tell former football jock turned entrepreneur.
Right.
That's the story I would tell.
Yeah.
So that's the story I told when I went into the elevator pitch. My name is Chris Valletta. I'm a former NFL player turned entrepreneur who's turned a real estate business from this to that in the span of 12 months. I'm super excited to be here. I think I could learn a ton from Mr. Trump, and I would love the opportunity to participate. That was all I said.
Right.
So as we were leaving, I saw the producer take my thing out of the pile, my form, and move it over to one. And I got a call that night. Hey, we'd like you to come back, second interview. Came back, did an interview, great. Next day, we'd like you to make a 5-minute day in the life of yourself video. We're going to use that and weed it down, and great, did that. Got another call. We'd like to fly you out to Los Angeles to meet with Mr. Trump for an interview. Cool. They flew 50 people out. Now, at the time, he was not in politics, okay?
This is what, 2006,
This
2007?
is 05.
05, okay.
Yeah, end of 04, 05.
Okay.
So, not in politics. But he's a mega superstar, right?
Oh, yeah.
Hit TV show, real estate guy, larger-than-life personality.
Right, because the show had already been on for
3 years.
3 years.
Season 4.
Season 4, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And it had already gained enough popularity. It was a household phenomenon.
It was. I think my season is probably the season it started to wane, which is when they flipped it. I think the year later or the 2 years later.
They made some changes to it? Okay.
But, when you're gearing up for that interview, you don't really know what to expect.
Yeah, like, how do you gear up for that? Like,
Right?
you're going to sit with Trump.
Right.
Yeah.
So, anyway, and they're filming the whole thing. Everything's on camera.
Yeah.
So, I walk in, and of course, I had a bunch of conversations with everybody, and just go in and be you, right? Just take the pressure off. Just go. If it is, it is. If it's not, it's not. Whatever. So that's what I did. So I sit down. I have my notebook. I'm sitting there. Cameras ready. Donald Trump sitting right in front of me.
Now, is it just you and him,
Just me
or
and him.
what's the room?
Me and him, camera setup like this.
It's a full camera setup.
Oh yeah.
Right there.
There's like 200 people in the producers, crews, cameras everywhere.
One big desk? Is it is it a boardroom?
He's on a,
and
he's
at
on a
the top?
couch. I'm in a chair like this.
Okay.
Little side table.
Yeah.
It was set up.
Yeah, I'm getting the picture here.
Yep.
This is okay.
And he's sitting there, wide stance.
Yeah.
You know the Trump
Oh yeah.
wide stance.
Yeah.
Full display.
Done. There you
Leaning
go.
forward like this, just looking at me with his,
Edge of the seat, as he always is. Yeah.
Take a guess what the first question was that he asked me.
I feel like it would start with the word why. I feel like it would be, why are you here?
Good question. No. He asked me how much I bench. Yeah. He goes, listen, before we get started, what do you bench?
Now, how close to NFL shape were you still in 05?
Not even close. I played,
You
heaviest I
played
ever
at
played.
310?
Yeah, I played 305-ish.
Okay.
Heaviest I ever got was like almost 330.
In the league or in college?
That was in college.
All
way
right.
too big. 305-ish.
But then after...
At this point, in front of him,
you're
I'm
4
probably
years out.
260, 265. I'm still working on it. So no, not nearly. But how much do you bench? And I just said, not enough. And he goes, why? I said, because if I benched enough, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you.
Oof.
I was like, did I just
Did he
kill
crack
myself?
a smile at
Did
least?
I kill myself?
No.
Or did I
He
help
cracked
myself?
the
He loved
smile.
it.
He definitely cracked the smile.
He loved it. He goes, I like that.
Yeah.
And then we got into it, and then we left. And so look, that experience, incredible.
Yeah.
Met my partner of 20 years, who was also on the show, who was an entrepreneur, who was crushing it up in New York, who basically just said, look, I don't know what you're doing in Texas, but sell everything and just come up to New York. You got to join me. We got to go. We got to work together.
And he was on the show too.
He was on the show.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And so that's what I did. And look, I've shared this with you.
Yeah.
Since Trump got into politics, obviously a lot of people ask me opinions about him. And I do some of the network contributing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go on TV, and there's certainly opportunities to talk about him and to sort of ride the wave that the traditional media likes to ride, right?
Right.
Hate him, persecute him, love him, celebrate him. I don't do either. I don't play in that camp because all I can play on is what I know. But here's what I know.
Okay.
There are 3 things that he did for me that to me say a lot about what's under the hood. Okay? I wrote a book, right? It's called Teamworks. I started it years before I was even on The Apprentice. It was like my way of taking what my dad told me and making a business book out of it, which is what I did. But The Apprentice was a catalyst for me to finish it. And I did. And it's a book, literally takes athletic principles and shows you how to use those to build successful business teams. And I'd never written a book before. So it took me a while, went through the process, finished the manuscript, got it to a point where I was really happy with it. And then I started sending it around to people. Could you read it? Could you, hey, influential person that I know that used to play in the NFL, would you contribute a section of the chapter? I got a bunch of those. My dad used to be a Super 8 Hotels, was a sponsor of NASCAR and Richard Petty. I was able to get Richard Petty to write a contribution to the book through that relationship, which was incredible. I got to meet him, and he asked me for my autograph, which I thought was the most insane thing ever. And then when it got time to see if I could get a quote from Mr. Trump, because I really wanted a quote from the president. Obviously not the president at the time, but something like, hey, read Chris's book, it's great. You could print that on the back of the book, right? So I called his assistant, Rona, who's worked with him for
long time, 30 years, right?
30 some odd years.
Yeah.
And explained to her, hey, could I get a quote? That's this and that. And so she said, I can't make any promises, obviously, but sure, send me the manuscript. So I did. But I put it in the mail, FedEx envelope, full manuscript. I put a blank sheet of paper in there with a pen, because I didn't know if he wanted to type it or write it, a quote or whatever. I wasn't sure. I put a return FedEx envelope in there. I put 2 copies of the manuscript. I mean, I made it as easy as you could possibly make it. Right?
Yeah.
So I sent it to him. Didn't hear anything. 2 weeks later, I get an email from Rona. Hi, Chris, I hope you're well. Gave your manuscript to Mr. Trump. Just wanted to give you a quick update. Unfortunately, he was unable to provide you with a quote. I'm sorry. And I was like, and she said, however, he noticed no one wrote your foreword. So he went ahead and did that instead. I hope that's okay. See attached. What? What? I open it. He wrote the foreword to the book.
Unbelievable.
Put that on the book. I called my high school football coach, who was the one I asked to write the foreword. I said,
This is a coach.
I have to move you
You
to
still
something.
call him coach to this day, I can
Absolutely.
imagine.
I said, listen.
Because once a coach, always a coach.
I have to move you to the afterward, not the forward. Here's the reason why.
And hopefully he was understanding.
You got it.
Yeah.
But the book got published right away. I got an agent right away. Got published right away. And that was amazing. That's the first thing he did.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Okay.
My dad, again, hospitality guy.
Right.
Back when my dad was a couple years before he retired, they had these huge conferences in Las Vegas. Huge. Every hotel manager, 5,000 people came in once every 2 years. Big entertainment, big, huge things, spectacle. And he just sort of off the cuff said to me, hey, see if you can get Mr. Trump to come speak at my conference in Vegas. I go, seriously, you want me to do that? He's like, yeah, why not? See what happens. So I call Rona.
And this is pre-politics.
Oh, yeah,
This is all pre-politics.
All pre-politics.
Yeah.
So I call Rona. Hey, Rona, my dad, Vegas, Super 8 Hotels, Howard Johnson, largest hotel operation in the world. Mr. Trump's a hotel operator. If there's any opportunity for him to come and speak for 1 hour as the keynote, it'd be great. Okay, I'll look at his schedule. Sure enough, a week later, hi, Chris. If you could please connect me to the team at Super 8 and Howard Johnson. The dates work for Mr. Trump. We'd like to get it figured out, and he'd love to come and speak. So he goes and speaks. It gets even better, right?
It gets better.
What's his speaking fee for an hour?
Now I was going to ask that.
God bless him.
He said,
$200,000
okay.
for an hour.
Okay.
$200,000.
Is that high, low, or is that about
me?
reasonable? I mean,
Let's just say that if you and I get to a point in our careers where we're getting 200 G's to give an hour speech, we're doing pretty well.
yeah.
Pretty
So,
darn
well, then that was his current rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they work it out. Dates work. He gets there. Pre-game photos. I get to see him. How you doing? Great. It was awesome. Taking pictures. He gives the speech. Speech is over. They go to pay him. He says, donate the money to Chris's dad's company charity.
Oh.
He also wrote me a letter of recommendation. It's hanging in my office, in my house. You've seen it.
I've seen it. Yep.
Just talking about my ability to translate the principles I learned as an athlete to the field. He did that right after he wrote my foreword. He wrote me a letter on my 40th birthday as President of the United States, wishing me a happy birthday, and signed it with his wife. Look, that's what I know.
And that's what you've experienced.
That's what I've experienced.
That's what, oh, right. Unreal. Great stories.
Pretty awesome.
Great stories. So, as you might need the lighter again, too. We're getting all these great
This
stories.
is
Hard to
rookie
smoke a
moves,
cigar.
right? Like,
No.
Should you not be lighting it every 10 seconds?
No. It's the fact that we're having such a good conversation, and you're sharing all these great stories with us. So it takes a little bit away from the fact that this gets in the way of some of the stories. But the value in the stories is definitely there. And so, all right, now you're on the field of the business world. You have a new uniform. You're using a lot of the same principles. As you're moving through your career within the founding of Mission,
Yeah.
how did that, if we can unpack that for a second, how did that unfold, the partners, the team, to where it is today? Because that's what, 8 or 9 year?
15.
15.
Yeah.
15 from when it started.
Yeah.
And I remember you sharing the story of the explosion through the roof during COVID,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When it was the gator masks.
Yep.
So once you transition out, how did that opportunity present itself? And what then caused the all-in poker metaphor?
Yeah. So I was working with my friend and business partner now, Josh Shaw, who I met on The Apprentice. We were working at his previous business when I first moved to New York. It sold to private equity. He left, I exited shortly after, and we lived in the same apartment building. And we knew we were going to do something together. And he is one of the most brilliant entrepreneurs I've ever met. The ability to think not just about the idea, but the consumer application and how far it could go. And so I remember one night he knocked on my door and he had a sample product in his hand and he goes, "We're going to build a product solutions company for athletes that solves problems unique to them. We're going to figure out all the problems athletes face with their bodies, their skin, their mental, all of it. We're going to look at everything. What are all the things that hold them back from peak performance? We're going to evaluate all of them, and we're going to make products that are better than anything that's ever existed." Couldn't be more congruent to my own background. And so I jumped in. And that was the birth of Mission. The idea was to work with the best professional athletes in the world, because if we could make things that were good for them, then you know automatically it'll work for anyone else.
Makes sense.
So we had some connections to various agents. We reached out to some big names. And 3 of the names we landed on and ended up working with back in like 2009, 2010 were Dwayne Wade, Drew Brees, and Serena Williams.
Serena, right.
And the premise was simple. They are equity holders in the brand.
They were equity holders also.
We don't pay them.
Got it.
You have to remember, context is important. In the NFL, there's a term that people say it's a copycat league. So like right now, the Kansas City Chiefs just won the Super Bowl. Next season, you will see a lot of the undertones of the success principles the Chiefs had. You'll see those. You'll see them finding their way into other teams' offensive and defensive strategies, because it's a copycat league. It worked for them. It'll probably work for us. And so at the time we launched Mission, vitamin water had just sold to Coca-Cola for $4 billion. And that transaction's not what's important. What's important is it was one of the first real celebrity equity-only deals that vitamin water had done with the rapper 50 Cent.
50 Cent, yeah.
And they also did it with the third baseman of the Mets, David Wright.
David Wright,
And
yeah.
each of those 2 guys on that sale of Coke made about $35 million each. Massive. So on the heels of that learning, the opportunity to create equity relationships in different verticals was very present at the time.
Got it.
And so we were able to capitalize on that and work with those 3 big names on an equity basis. Today, everybody wants equity and cash. Totally different universe. But that's what happened back then. And it was simple. They help us develop product, and we don't bring it to market until they say it's the best thing ever. And when they say that, we then wrap it in beautiful packaging and we go sell it. But the early days of the company were all trying to identify what is that big problem athletes face. Like we can't be all things to all people. And we tried different things. Better grip on your equipment, skin issues, traction on court surfaces. But then we came across one that was arguably the greatest problem I faced as an athlete, and that was the heat and the problem of temperature as it relates to not only your safety, but your ability to perform. If you think about an athlete's performance like Serena at the Australian Open, It's 130 degrees on the court surface. And you're operating 3 hours at a time at 130 degrees on that court with your motor running. Your body temperature increases. Now, when you're physically in shape like she is, getting your body up to 102, maybe even 103, no problem. Same thing with a marathon runner. It's what happens when you hit that time to exhaustion, that exhaustion point, where it doesn't matter what shape you're in, your body will physically begin to shut down.
Okay.
And so as your body temperature rises, the timing to that exhaustion point starts to shorten. We said that if we could somehow create cooling gear through apparel, through accessories, through textiles, that lengthen that time to exhaustion, we could improve Serena's performance just by physically what she's wearing. And that's what we did. And so Mission is an apparel and accessories company with integrated cooling technology for anyone that lives, works, or plays in the heat. Because we believe the heat should never slow you down, or it should never cause you to be unhealthy or live anything less than a high performance life. And we have product solutions that help you do just that.
Got it.
And the brand is sold now in 30,000 stores in the United States.
Yeah.
And it's a huge success. It's awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. Two other pivots from there. I think one of them we can probably talk about playing a game of pool. So I think from there we'll be able to finish that cigar a little bit and maybe place a little friendly wager on our game of 9-ball. You know, I don't know, needs to be a friendly, competitive wager.
Gutsy, not knowing how good I am or bad I am at pool.
I don't know. I mean, it might need to be that I get the keys to Eleanor for the weekend, right? And I mean, if we're gonna bet, let's bet. I don't know how to play 9-ball at all, but if
I will say this.
What's that?
I have two questions.
Okay.
Question number one: do you know how to drive a stick?
Yes, but I don't know if I'd want to do it in a 1967.
68.
Oh, in a 68, I'll do it then. Oh. If it was 67, everyone knows the throttle body of the. No, I'm just making it up.
I'm actually, I've said to myself, I will only let my dad drive that car.
Yeah.
He's the only one that's driven it.
Yeah.
But when you come to me and say, no problem on the stick,
we'll find a bet.
You're going to be in the seat.
Well, one of the other things that we have on deck is a pilot's license. So that's going to be within the next couple of years. We have a gentleman on the team that has his pilot's license right now, and that's something we think is a skill that we want to take into the future. So that's going to be there. But the last two for us to definitely tap on as we're going around is Amplify, right? Because with the program you're building out of Texas A&M for those young athletes to be able to transition with a lot of those skills. And then lastly, some family, right? Family and faith, and you know how that's started in New York and came down. I mean, you and I could sit and talk for 3 hours easily. But in thinking through some of those topics that a lot of the audience would gain a lot from, where they can get some real great stories of how to say, hey, how do we take this to the next level? And maybe the bet will just be lunch for now.
Love it, brother.
You know, but maybe we'll play a game of 9-ball, and I don't know, you might be better than I think.
I don't know. Maybe I am.
All right, let's go.
Thanks, bro. So in the 9-ball, you play the
lowest ball.
You play the lowest ball.
Right, that you could hit into the 9, but if you happen to break the 9, then you win the game automatically. So I happen to break the 9 happened to go in, so I happen to accidentally win. But one of the things that we were talking about is transitioning from college. By the way, perspective on NIL.
Yeah.
Is it, as a former athlete, is it across the board? I mean, you've obviously been in their shoes.
Yeah.
So do you see that as something? Because I feel like if you're looking at it from the business lens and also from the athlete lens, how is that? Your perspective on that.
The idea of getting paid, I always agreed with. When NIL was first introduced, I was adamantly against it because there were no details about how it was going to be implemented. And in my mind, I thought, what are you going to do? Just dump $100,000 in a 18-year-old's lap and expect things to just work out? Like, that's not going to work. So I spoke out against it. And then I shifted the way which I was talking about it by saying things like, I am for NIL. What I'm not for is this Wild West mentality of implementing it.
Okay.
So in other words, could we come up with a system in the way in which those dollars are deployed so that the student is still an athlete and the athlete's still a student and they still get the college experience? Could we put the money in escrow? Could we give them when they get their diploma and they walk across the stage, they get a check with interest? Could we come up with a game plan to at least administer this in a way that is responsible instead of just taking a kid who's got 1 million Twitter followers at 19 years old and hasn't lived life the way you and I understand that to be, and dumping $1 million in.
Yep.
That was my problem.
Got it. So when you look at Amplify, right, the program that you worked with Texas A&M to put together, how is that working or building?
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept of Amplify U was based on the dilemma that I faced and a lot of athletes face when they're done playing. When you're a college athlete at a high level, you don't have the luxury of doing internships like every other student.
Right.
Because you're always training. And when you're always training, you're 80 hours a week, right? And so the challenge with that is they think they're at a disadvantage. Well, going back to the conversation I had with you about my dad, you're not at a disadvantage. Not only are you not at a disadvantage, the skills you have are the most in demand. You're at a much bigger advantage. Amplify U was set up at Texas A&M to
Scratch, or you.
Was effectively set up.
Well, scratch anyway because I didn't hit the 4. All right. That's all you.
I still got to get to the 4 though.
Yeah.
So, when I realized that we could create a partnership between the athletic department and the business school and teach student athletes how their instinctive leadership skills apply into business by giving them practical business skill training.
Right.
That amplifies their leadership, their instincts.
All right.
Then we can produce ready leaders in the market.
As we were talking about before, and that being the one skill that
Most important thing.
So
Amplify U is just that. It's a bridge. Because if you, which I think you believe, because I've talked about it with you before, I believe leadership in the country.
You didn't see that.
I believe leadership at all levels, family, governments, business, is eroding at an exponential pace. I think it's the greatest cultural erosion of leadership in the history of mankind. And we are not talking enough about it. And if we want to talk about
as just the leadership of erosion as a whole.
Right. I mean, if
in
I
life,
asked you,
leading the family.
Do you think we have good leadership in the country right now?
Well,
I think the answer is no.
I think the answer is no.
I think most of the people would say that. Well, what are we going to do about that? I love history. In 1964, Ronald Reagan was giving a speech before he got into politics, but this was actually a political speech on behalf of a candidate named Barry Goldwater. Was that the 9 ball?
You hit the 9 in.
What am I doing? Yeah, that's an idiot move.
Yeah.
He was giving a speech on behalf of Barry Goldwater, and he was talking about the threat that communism faces to the United States and to the world. Just read it.
Yeah.
And the threat of communism to the world was it was the tenor of the speech.
Yeah.
But he said something, and many historians have dubbed the name of his speech "A Time for Choosing." He basically said, "We're at war with the greatest enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars." And it's been said, if we lose this war, and in so doing, lose this way of life of ours, then history will record with the greatest of astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening, right? So I take that context, communism, big threat in the world. Him saying that we have to decide if we're going to live on our feet or die on our knees. And then I look at the most important thing to developing a cohesive culture and team is leadership. And if that's eroding in our country, then the very fabric and foundation of the country is eroding along with it. That, to me, is the crisis of our time, which therefore makes it our time for choosing. Because if 50 years from now, we've chosen to do nothing, history will record with the greatest of astonishment. Those who had the most to lose did the least.
Makes
So,
sense.
dude, this is what it's about. It's about producing values-based leaders that can make an impact, that understand the value of what a team is. The word team is an acronym. Together, each achieves more. Redwood trees are 350, 500 feet tall, the biggest, heaviest trees in the world. They have the shallowest root systems. Why don't they fall over in every windstorm? It's because their roots don't go deep, they go wide, and they intertwine with all the other redwood tree roots. They have to rely on each other to become giants as individuals. Oof. Together, each achieves more. It's the definition of a team, is this. So if it's this is the definition of a team, what's going to keep us strong and healthy and prosperous and secure as a country, would you say that this is where we are right now?
I wouldn't say
we're
we were.
torn apart.
Agreed.
And if we're torn apart, the only thing that can bring us back together is values-based leadership.
Agreed.
And that's what we need more of.
Is this you? I think it's your shot.
Is it my shot?
Yep.
Sorry, I thought it was yours. And honestly, man, that's what Amplify You is intended to do. I'm not doing that because I want athletes to become pro. I hope they go pro. Mm-hmm. But it's really.
All right, next shot wins.
There you go.
Get a little creative with it. Next shot wins.
Whether they go pro or not, I want student athletes to realize that the power they have is real and exponential.
I didn't do that intentionally, by the way. No. Your shot.
All right, if I make it, you can drive Eleanor.
All right. If you make it?
If I make it. If I miss it, you can drive Eleanor.
All right.
We got to work on that.
All right, we have it on camera.
We
have it on camera. Game over.
Love it, bro. Hey,
Appreciate you being here.
So happy for you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, man.
Good to see you.
You too.